In only a couple of days, we'll get to experience further adventures with Cal Kestis and Jedi Survivor. I've been wanting to make a lightsaber for ages now, so with a new lathe, I thought I'd take the opportunity to show off my newfound skills. Maybe not the skills you were thinking of though. Anyway, Cal Kestis' lightsaber is on the agenda today, and the result will not disappoint. Like my ongoing supernatural cult build, I'm wanting to make this prop replica as realistic as I can. That means using metal wherever possible. With a new lathe, that'll make doing just that much easier. There'll still be a couple of 3D printed elements, but they'll be used as a last resort. For this project, I'm going to use solid aluminium bar stock for the chassis and pommel, a large diameter aluminium tube for the blade guards, and a smaller diameter aluminium tube for the core. The pommel, grip and chassis will all be mounted to this core tube, so that's cut to rough length first. One of the two 3D printed components used in this build is fitted to the core next, the grip. This was printed in TPU to give a rubberized texture. The parts definitely needed some convincing to fit on the core, so they aren't going anywhere. The two primary components that will need to be turned in this project are the pommel and the chassis. First off, I'm addressing the pommel. After cutting down the aluminium bar stock to length, I then proceed to marking up the end of the piece such that I can drill recesses to accommodate the belt loop feature on the pommel. With those holes in place, into which I'll later fit TIG filler rod to act as the loop, I then proceed to boring out the pommel to fit the core. After performing this step, I then moved on to turning the outer features of the pommel. This was when I realised my mistake. Working on this part unsupported was less than ideal, and I struggled to achieve a decent surface finish. Ultimately, I was able to finish the piece, but should have made better use of the tailstock to turn this part. Oh well, lesson learned, I guess. The excess stock was then removed, the surface finished, and the belt loop fitted. The next part to machine is the chassis. This part is much longer than the pommel in overall length. Still, I decided to bore out the part to fit the core and then suffer in silence later. The outer dimension of the chassis required turning down at both ends and a taper transition at the mid-body. This was a good test of the limitations and constraints of my lathe. Fortunately, there was no hindrance to me making these parts, so I'm pretty happy with my purchase. This part took me a good while to make though, having to take shallow cuts to minimise chatter and achieve the best surface finish I could manage, because I didn't use the tailstock. My work certainly ain't winning any awards. But I think I can add Master of Push Fits to my resume. The fit of these parts was pretty fun to fidget with. The shape of the blade guards were made in a roundabout kind of way. I 3D printed a model of the blade guard, converted that shape to 2D, and then traced it onto the aluminium tube I plan to use. After a lot of filing, grinding, sanding and polishing, I then gave thought to how I actually wanted to mount these parts to the emitter, but we'll come back to that. Let's talk about the emitter itself first. This is the second of two pieces that are 3D printed in this build. I ended up printing this part on my SLA resin machine in order to get all the intricate details of the emitter nice and crisp. After removing details through sanding and painting, adding details back in by using the pin vise to drill out holes in the emitter, I then gave the whole part a coat of black paint and weathered it slightly with some dry brushing. Prior to printing the emitter, I incorporated voids in the 3D model. These are used as mounting points for the blade guards. Small fasteners were glued to the blade guards, fixtured off the emitter recesses themselves. After this glue was dry, 3D printed standoffs were fitted to set the spacing of the blade guards from the emitter. Other details like the small, I think, on-off switches on the lightsaber were added using pieces of ABS that were fastened with more threaded fixtures. The only thing left to add was what I was most worried about this entire project. I considered a number of manufacturing processes in CAD for how to cut these slots in the chassis, but was never happy with the risk versus reward proposition of adding these features manually. Drilling and sawing the slots would probably be the easiest solution, but involve a lot of filing to get a finished product. So I decided to wuss out and simply paint these features on the chassis. With the body finished and the emitter painted and glued up, there's only one thing left to do, and that's join them together. And I think the result is pretty epic. Thanks for watching today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, chuck us a like and a sub if you want to see more of this kind of content in the future. Catch you later. Bye.